Hello everyone, my name is Amaka and you're welcome to Lizama Stitches. In this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to make corset with keyhole neckline. Now if this looks like what you would like to learn, keep watching, click on the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload new videos. So let's get started. So now I've drawn some lines already. Now this is my starting point, which is also going to serve as my shoulder line. This is my bust point. This is my under bust point, this is my waist point, and this is the full length of my corset, and this is my hemming allowance. Now I'm going to start by taking my neck measurement. Now the neck width I'm working with is 3 inches and the neck depth is 3 inches. Now connect it. My shoulder measurement is 14 inches. 14 divided by 2 gives you 7 inches, plus half inch seam allowance gives you 7.5 inches. So this is my 7.5 inches. This is my 7.5 inches. Now from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. And I'll connect this point to this point. Now from this point, I'm going to impute my armhole depth. Half of my armhole measurement is 8 inches, so I'm going to mark 8 inches here. Now this measurement I have here, this 7.5 inches I have here, I'm bringing it down here. I'll connect the points. And I'll extend this point to this point. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find the midpoint of this line. So this is the midpoint of this line. And I'm going to impute my bust circumference, my bust measurement. Now, my bust circumference is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches here. And I'll connect the points. Now, now on this point, now from here, I'm going to go in by 3/4 inch. While on this point, I'm going to impute my bust measurement on this point. Now, my bust circumference is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches here. So this is my 9.5 inches. Now I'm going to connect the points. I'll connect this point to this point and this point to this point. Just like this. Now let me label these lines. Now this is my chest point. This is my bust point. This is my under bust point. This is my waist point. This is the full length of my blouse, and this is my seam allowance. Now I'm going to impute my dart. Now for me to do that, I'm going to be working with my nipple to nipple measurement. Half of my nipple to nipple measurement is 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches here. And I'll mark 4 inches here. So I'll connect the points. Now I'm going to impute my dart. Now from this point, I'm going to come down by 1. Now I'm going to extend this line. I'll extend my chest point. From this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. Now to impute my dart, from this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And on my waist point, I'm going to, now this is my bust point, I came down by 1 inch. From my waist point, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. On the under bust point, I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this line. And here, I'm going to mark 1 inch. I'm going to mark 1 inch and I'll connect the points. I'm going to find the midpoint of this line. Now this is the midpoint of this line. I'm going to connect this point to this point. So now for my sweetheart neckline, that is my yoke. I'm going to mark 8 inches for my yoke, for my sweetheart neckline. For my neckline, I'm going to mark 8 inches. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find, now on this line, I'm going to mark 1 inch, the same measurement I have here. I'm going to mark it here, 1 inch on both sides of this line. I'll mark 1 inch here, and I'll mark 1 inch here, and I'll connect this point to this point, and this point to this point, and this point to this point, and this point to this point, just like this. Now I'm going to do this. I'll connect this point to this point. I'll connect this point to this point, and I'll connect this point to this point. Now to draw my sweetheart neckline, I'm going to mark ½ inch on this line. Now you can decide to use your chest point as a guide. If you don't want your sweetheart neckline to be deep, you can just come down by ½ inch here or 1 inch, depending on how deep you want your sweetheart neckline. But I'm using my bust point because I want it to be a little bit low. So now here I'm going to mark ½ inch here, and I'm going to mark ½ inch here, and I'll connect the point. To create my cup, I'm going to connect this point to this point, just like this. Now when doing this, you have to place your ruler in such a way that you're going to have enough space to accommodate your boobs. Now, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to connect this point to this point, and I'm going to connect this point to this point. Now for this point, for here, I'm going to find the midpoint of this point and this point. Now this is the midpoint. So I'm going to connect this point to this point. Now I'm going to do it in such a way that I'm going to have enough space to accommodate my boobs. Now don't do this. At times you see people doing this. Now this is wrong. It will make your cup to be like a V. No, your cup should be like a cup. It should be like a cup. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this point to this point, just like this. So this is my cup. So now these 2 inches that I have here, these 2 inches that I'm going to remove here, I'm returning it here. I'm returning it here, 2 inches. Now this is my bust circumference. My bust circumference is 9.5 inches plus the 2 inches that I'm removing from here. I'm returning it. So that puts me here. Now my underbust point, my underbust circumference is 30 inches. 30 divided by 4 gives you 7.5 inches. Plus these 2 inches for this dart puts you here. Now my waist circumference is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. 8 inches plus 2 inches, these 2 inches that I'm returning it. My hip circumference is 40 inches. 40 divided by 4 gives you 10 inches. Gives you 10 inches. Now I'm going to connect the points. I'm going to add my seam allowance. Now the seam allowance I'm working with 1.5 inches seam allowance. So for my keyhole neckline, to determine where my keyhole neckline is going to start from, I'm going to measure 3 inches from this from this from the initial neckline. From this neckline, I'm going to measure 3 inches. Now you can decide to use 2 inches. You can also decide to use 3 inches. It all depends on how big you want your keyhole neckline to be. So I'm going to be using 3 inches. Now 3 inches. Now, and the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this point to this point. Now this varies for different people. You can decide to, you can decide to end your keyhole neck. It all depends on where you want your keyhole neckline to end. But I'm just going to do something like this. With my free hand, I'm going to connect this point to this point, and I'll just blend it up with a cup. So after that, I'm going to on this I'm going to curve my blouse. So from this point, I'm going to go up by 2 inches. So I'll go up by 2 inches from here, and I'll connect this point to this point, just like this. So that's just it with the front panel. Now I'm going to cut it. So after cutting, now this is what I'll have. I'm going to have something like this. Now let me label my cups. Now I'm going to label this one, and this is 2. So I'm going to say up. Now this U stands for up, so that I'll know where, and this is the lower part. Now just do everything possible. So this is the center front, and this is the side front. I'm going to add, now while transferring this to my fabric, I'm going to cut 2 of these. I'll cut 2 of these. I'll cut 1 of these. This is already on fold, so I'm going to cut 1 of these, and I'll cut 2 of these. I'll cut 1 of these. So this is already on fold. Now this is my yoke. This is my yoke. So while cutting, I'm going to add seam allowance here. I'm going to add seam allowance all around this. I'll add seam allowance all around this. For this one, I'm going to add seam allowance here. And for this, I'm going to add seam allowance here and here. I'm also going to add here. I've already added on the lower part and on the side, so I'm not going to add there again. So I'm going to do the back. Now, if you notice, you'll see that my back panel doesn't have a zipper allowance, because I'm going to be using loops. So that's why I didn't add zipper allowance. So I'm going to take my neck measurement. Neck width of 3 inches and neck depth of 1 inch. Now shoulder measurement of, half of my shoulder measurement is 7 inches plus half inch seam allowance, 7.5 inches. Now on this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. And I'll connect it. I'm going to impute half of my armhole measurement. This is half of my armhole measurement. So I'm going to, now the measurement I have here, 7.5 inches. This is my chest point. Let me label these lines. This is my chest point. This is my waist point. This is the full length of my corset. So now this shoulder measurement I have here, 7.5 inches. I'm going to bring it down here on my chest point, and I'll connect the points. Now I'm going to impute my bust circumference. My bust circumference divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 9.5 inches here. I'll mark 9.5 inches here, and I'm going to find the midpoint of this line, and this is the midpoint of this line. So I'm going to connect this point to this point. So to impute my dart, I'm going to mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inches. 4 inches here, and I'll mark 4 inches here. And I'll connect the points. Now on the waist point, I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of this line. ½ inch here and ½ inch here. And on this point, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. From this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And I'll connect the points. Now from this point, I'm going to mark 1 inch here. I'm going to mark 1.5 inches here, 1.5 inches here, and I'm going to mark 2.5 inches here, because my back is going to have loops. So 1.5 inches here and 2.5 inches here. I'm going to cut off 2.5 inches. Now you can decide to cut off 2 inches and cut off 1 inch here. So I'm going to connect it. From this point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. I'll come down by 1 inch and I'll connect it back to the armhole. Now I'm going to add my horizontal measurement. My bust circumference is 38 inches. 38 divided by 4 gives you 9.5 inches. My waist circumference is 32 inches. 32 divided by 4 gives you 8 inches. So this is my 8 inches. Plus this 1 inch that puts you here. My hip circumference is 40 inches. 40 divided by 4 puts you here 10 inches. 10 inches. So I'll connect it. So I'm going to add my seam allowance. The seam allowance I'm working with is 1.5 inches. So I'll connect it. Now remember that on the front panel, I went up by 2 inches. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'll go up by 2 inches. And I'll curve it. Now from here, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And I'll connect this point. Now I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to connect it back to this point because I'm cutting off this part. I'm cutting off this part. So I'm connecting this point back to this point, just like this. Now I'm going to have a button here, button loops, buttonhole, button. There'll be button here. So I'm going to cut this off. Let me add my shoulder seam allowance. So I'll cut it. So this is the yoke, and I'm just going to label this 1 and 2. So I'm going to stop here for today. In our next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to sew your corset.